This is an ABP Live Podcast.
And that's a brand new episode of Cracking Conversation and ABP Live Podcast. I'm Aabir Lahiry. Joining me today in conversation is Mr. Tarun Sharma. He's coming all the way from Pune just to have this conversation with me. He's the founder and CEO of Yoddha. What exactly Yoddha is? Yoddha is a elder care application or a platform जहाँ पे कोई भी बुजुर्ग अगर if he needs any kind of assistance, Yoddha is there to help you. What's up? Welcome to ABP Live Podcast.
A pleasure. Thank you. It's so nice to be here to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Really looking forward to this podcast.
I really like the idea कि elder care. There are few startups or few companies in this space, but I really like the concept कि यार application के through you can rent a service, you can rent few equipments which are required for elderly people. क्या है? कहाँ से आया idea? I really want to know that.
एक तो ये है कि I am a techie.
Okay.
I'm a techie. All my life I've built software.
Okay.
This is not common for techies to get into the elder care business. What happens typically, people who are getting into the elder care business are generally from the real estate world because they're building living facilities or from the healthcare world.
Okay.
Software से कोई elder care में शायद अभी तक नहीं आया है. I'm probably the first entrant, and that's why I probably look at the problem space a little bit differently also. Now the idea comes. There are many companies Aabir which are spreadsheet companies. मतलब पहले आप एक opportunity identify करते हो, फिर एक business plan लिखते हो, फिर उसके बाद भी you raise funds and you start executing on it. This company is not a spreadsheet company. मतलब this comes from very personal experiences and two in prime. In 2016, I lost my dad to paralysis. My dad and I both lived in the same city in Pune. My dad lived about 20 minutes away from me. Both my mom and dad lived with my younger brother, who's unmarried. So they choose to live with him rather than live with me. I have my own family. On Father's Day in 2016, my brother called me saying, Dad's fallen down. And I didn't think much of it because people fall down. But he said, Dad is behaving a little weird. कुछ तो भी अलग लग रहा है. So then I thought maybe he's getting paralyzed, कुछ हो सकता है, concussion हो सकता है, paralysis कुछ भी हो सकता है. So I decided to dispatch an ambulance and I went to my father's house with my mom. My mom was with me that time. By the time we reached, ambulance had not reached, and when we started calling the ambulance driver, he would not pick up, and that's because I didn't know who to call. So सबसे पहले आप Google करते हो. We Googled it, found the first ambulance number, called him. He said, I'll come. उसको address दिया. He didn't reach. Stopped picking up my call. Then I put my dad in my car. I took him to the closest hospital because that was what sounded like common sense. Take him to the closest hospital. When we went there, फिर वो registration के बाद doctor checked. He said, your dad is getting paralyzed. But we can't treat him here. You need to take him to another hospital. To put my dad back in my car, take him to another hospital. Then the treatment started, and in that we lost some amount of time. And he lost his ability to sit, stand, talk and eat. And 6 months later, he passed away. That left an impression on me, but not enough of an impression to leave what I was doing. I was running a software company called BMC Software in India at that point in time. I continued to do my job, but it made an impression because I started comparing. I lived abroad for many years, Aabir. I lived in Boston. In the US, if that happens, you call 911, 5 minutes the ambulance is there, 5 minutes you're in the hospital, your injection is administered to you, and then you're good. You can recover from that. But in India, I made that comparison, this is not very organized. An ambulance is not reliable and so on and so forth. Then 2019, when I left BMC, I started another software company, not Yoddha, another one. But in October of 2019, my mom was detected with a very aggressive form of breast cancer. And we started everything, chemotherapy, radiation, everything that comes with it. And it's not very simple. I mean, emotions apart. There's a lot of logistics also involved in it because you have to take her for chemo, uske pehle blood test karao, uske pehle urine test karao. There can be no blood sugar, there can be no infection. So all of that happened. But one day before the Janata lockdown of COVID, she passed away. Then in COVID, we saw all the elders struggling. बच्चे यहाँ नहीं आ सकते थे, वो उनके बच्चों के पास नहीं जा सकते थे. बेसिक थिंग्स, दवाइयाँ हो, ग्रोसरीज हो, कुछ नहीं डिलीवर हो रहा था. That is when I changed my mind about what I was going to do. Software कोई भी बना सकता है. But to take care of elders, I thought was my calling. And that is how I got into this space. Now, when I got into this space, I realized that this is wide open because there are not too many players in this particular space. And in my own mind, there are two philosophies. One is that the best old age home is the one you currently live in. क्योंकि you're comfortable, आप आपके neighbors को पहचानते हो, आपका grocer है, pharmacist है, doctor बाजू में है.
And nostalgia है.
हाँ. So yes, exactly. And the older you become, the more nostalgic and
more
emotional you become. Correct.
Correct.
So that was my first philosophy. And the second is that if you look at India, India's grown primarily because of a lot of export of IT services, and along with that, people also left. Now, I'm 52 years old, and if I look at my own classmates, I'm an engineer, software engineer. None of my friends are here, and their parents are aging, and I was not the only one. Matlab, there are many of the people that went. So the big brain drain happened in the 80s, 90s, 2000s.
True.
Today there is a lot of opportunity for people in India. तब नहीं होती थी. उनके सारे parents are now aging. And the last part is that India itself has developed beautifully. मतलब you got aggregators for anything. आपको taxi चाहिए, खाना चाहिए, जो चाहिए, everything is available at the click of a button. But the older people are not comfortable with technology, you know. So all of a sudden, it was a culmination of many things that the infrastructure had developed. There was a very clear target audience that needed help, that were uncomfortable with all of that development. And so that was when I decided I was going to get into this space. And my second philosophy then came into play, which is that if your child doesn't live with you, then Yoddha is your child. And so anything that you would call your child for, छोटे से छोटा हो या बड़े से बड़ा, Yoddha will do it for you.
पंखा साफ कर दे,
कुछ भी करूँगा,
सब्जी ले आ,
कुछ भी करेंगे आप उनके लिए. But the difference was, because I'm a technologist, we built a lot of technology to ensure consistent delivery of service. अगर आपको सब्जी चाहिए और हमने बोला 20 मिनट में पहुंच जाएगी, तो वो 20 मिनट में पहुंचेगी. 50 मिनट बाद या 1 घंटे बाद नहीं पहुंचेगी. And that reason is that we built systems, processes, technologies to make it easy for them and ensure consistency of service. The last point, which is very important, is that when you're dealing with senior citizens, there is a big element of trust, because they're a vulnerable and easily abusable segment of society. So I had to make sure that we only hire people that are trustworthy. Now, living in India, the highest institution of trust is the Indian Army. So we only hire people from the Indian Army. These are Jawans. They are young, they are 35, 40 years old, short commission karke, when they come out back into the civilian world, those are the people we hire. They have a sense of urgency,
discipline.
They're discipline. Their ethical and moral compass is the best amongst anybody you can. So we put all of these things in place: technology, process, people. All of them to basically serve the people. And the ethos of the company is what you would call seva bhav. मतलब हम सेवा करने के लिए हैं. हम आपके, I mean, I joke about this. I say we are Karn, मतलब duty bound child. I am Karn. आपने अगर मुझे कोई responsibility दी है तो मैं उसको निभाऊंगा,
पूरा करूंगा.
हाँ, और consistently करूंगा, हर बार करूंगा, quality के साथ करूंगा.
I really like the human or emotional touch you brought to the entire startup ecosystem. Sadly, you know what's common between both of us?
Yeah.
We both of us lost our parents through the same diseases.
Oh my God.
I lost my dad to paralysis and ischemic stroke, my mom to breast cancer.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
oh my God.
I can so relate to all the sufferings and whatever you were saying around this time.
I'm so sorry.
No problem. Part and parcel of life, I guess. What all services does Yoddha provide? Like,
so I'll break it down.
कि कैसे आया और कैसे क्या क्या services बना सकते हैं?
हाँ, I'll break it down very simply. There are three primary things we do for our parents. I don't like calling them customers because they're really my adopted parents, okay, right? Emergency response is number one, because everybody must have peace of mind. And especially if you got a parent that is living alone, or even if they are two, but they are having some sort of health issues, कोई बाजू में नहीं है, they need peace of mind कि अगर कुछ हो गया, health problem हो, कुछ भी हो, there is somebody there to manage that emergency for you. So number one thing that we do is emergency management. Number two, health. As people get older, something or the other goes wrong. So ensuring that these things fall into three categories: diagnostic services, routine health,
okay,
as well as chronic. And
here is coffee for you.
Perfect, thank you. And then the last thing that we do is all other services. मतलब
coffee.
मैंने आपको बोला, yes, thank you.
This is tea. Thank you, Thank you.
That all the other services fall into the third category, which is anything from मुझे आप शिरडी ले जाओ, मुझे दर्शन करने हैं साईं बाबा के,
Okay.
या मेरी फ़्लाइट बुक करा दो, मुझे मेरे बेटे के साथ जाके समर में अमेरिका में रहना है, मुझे एयरपोर्ट तक ड्रॉप कर दो, वहाँ पे एक व्हील चेयर का भी बंदोबस्त कर दो, मतलब एनीथिंग, आपका बैंक का काम हो, इंश्योरेंस का काम हो, गवर्नमेंट का काम हो, एनीथिंग. सो essentially I'm telling you literally when I say that anything you call a child for, you call me for, I will do it for you.
And how does it function? Like there is an application?
Yes, there is a very simple application. It's basically just think of it as a button on a phone.
हाँ.
आप अगर उसको एक सिंगल टैप करते हो तो उसका मतलब एक रूटीन सर्विस है. It's not emergency.
Okay.
And if you keep that button pressed for 3 seconds, it becomes an emergency.
Okay.
When that emergency is raised, I have a 24/7 command center, which is staffed by my army guys. They are watching 24/7. Loud alarms play in that command center, and instantly they basically call you back. If you don't pick up, they call the next person, a whole calling tree to identify what is the nature of the emergency. And then we break down the emergencies into different categories. Is it life-threatening? If it is life-threatening, there's a different protocol. If it is not life-threatening, there's a different protocol. If it is criminal in nature, then there is a different protocol. So we've got protocols for almost every emergency. So we pick the emergency protocol that is going to be executed, and instantly many teams are formed. For example, if there is a life-threatening emergency, then 3 teams get formed. एक command center में team होती है. This command center team does the entire coordination of the emergency. They form 2 other teams. Team A goes to the house, Team B goes to the hospital. Team A then provides any on-ground support, first aid देना है, pick them up, any support when the ambulance reaches to, physical support. Mm-hmm. The guy in the hospital is filling up all the administrative forms. He's briefing the doctor because we keep all the medical records and medical profiles of our parents. So they brief the doctor कि this is the past history, अभी ये issue हुआ है उनके साथ में. The guys in the command center, they call the child, they move money because hospital में पैसा खर्च होता है. So they move the money to the guy who's in the hospital to make the deposits,
okay,
pay for the diagnosis, everything. So it's a well-oiled machinery.
Okay.
It's a well-oiled machinery. But for the parent, all they have to do is press that button. मतलब हमने जो technology है इतनी simple रखी है उनके लिए, सारे complications backend में है.
That makes sense because if somebody is 70 or 80,
yeah,
I doubt they'll be able to operate an application or emergency में कौन सोचेगा?
And obviously our preferred thing is button दबाओ. But if they call also, we still handle it the same way. Okay. I'll tell you the only difference is why we prefer to press the button. When you press that button, I know the location of the emergency. I know who's raising that emergency. I know a lot more about you. But when you pick up when you call, like a typical 911 call in America, I have to first establish who are you, what is the nature of the emergency, because
what is
it
your
is also
name,
possible.
what everything.
Name तो I can store in my caller ID में मेरे को नाम दिख जाएगा.
Okay.
But then I have to look up in my system कि आप हैं कौन, आपको क्या problem है, all of that. So and location. So what happens if somebody says मैं मगरपट्टा सिटी में हूँ, तो मगरपट्टा सिटी might be 2-3 kilometers long, और somebody says मैं Seasons Mall में हूँ, I have fallen down in Seasons Mall, अभी Seasons Mall में 3 मंजिलें हैं और कौन से दुकान की, so establishing the location becomes a little problem.
Sure.
So we prefer that they press the button, but if they don't press the button, it is not a problem because we get the emergency call sometimes from the parent, sometimes from the child, sometimes from a neighbor or a caretaker. So it doesn't matter. We've handled all the situations.
Makes sense. अभी कौन-कौन सी cities हैं?
Pune, Mumbai, Hyderabad.
Okay.
3 cities.
Any plans of expansion?
Yeah, we are going to. First thing is these cities are huge by themselves. तो ये 3 cities में expand करते करते ही काफी साल लग सकते हैं. But हाँ, because Bombay, think about Bombay, how huge Bombay is and the number of people in Bombay.
True.
So in Bombay, we might have maybe 10 zones. We are operational in 4 zones.
Every zone have one command center.
No, command center is common.
Across India?
Across India, there's only one command center because we are all central. Basically, everything comes into the command center, and from there we dispatch based on who's where.
Okay.
सबसे पास में कौन है, हॉस्पिटल कौन सा पास में, so all of that happens, coordination happens from the center, but we need people on the ground, and so for that people on the ground, the whole element is that we can't operate in large zones, क्योंकि अगर किसी को 15-20 मिनट में पहुंचना है, आधे घंटे में पहुंचना है,
तो वो ट्रैफिक में फंस के नहीं बैठ सकता, स्पेशली इन बैंगलोर.
And the thing is, I'll tell you something, because we hire army guys ना, they're always doing drills. I'll give you a simple example. अगर आप मेरे कस्टमर हो, right, you're a parent that's come onto my platform. जिस दिन आप हमारे प्लेटफॉर्म पे आते हो, उसके बाद में सबसे पहले 4 ड्रिल्स होते हैं आपके साथ में. वो आदमी, हमारा आदमी आपके घर आएगा सुबह ट्रैफिक में, शाम को ट्रैफिक में, दिन में और रात को 2 बजे, क्योंकि हमको देखना है कितना टाइम लगता है. एक बार वो आपके घर आएगा, फिर वो एंट्री प्रोसीजर समझेगा, आपके पास में माई गेट है या ये है जो भी है, he'll understand that, he'll talk to the security guards that we are from Yoddha and we have a person living here who's on our platform, and he will typically call us when he's in trouble. What is the smoothest entry procedure? वहाँ से वो he will do a dry run to the closest hospital. He'll do a dry run to the preferred hospital, so that we have on ground at night. Let's assume that we didn't do all of this. If there is an emergency at 2 o'clock at night, you don't want that guy trying to figure out ये society कहाँ है और
जाना कहाँ है.
तो because of this army guys ना, and they are doing constant dry runs, मतलब सरप्राइज ड्राई रन्स होते हैं. आपके बिहाफ पे हमें इमरजेंसी रेज कर देते हैं 3 बजे, देखते हैं कैसे हमारा टीम कैसा परफॉर्म कर रहा है. सो वी आर ऑलवेज प्रिपेयर्ड. वी रन इट लाइक द आर्मी रन्स देयर ऑपरेशंस, एंड इट्स रन बाय अ कर्नल बाजवा रन्स दैट ऑपरेशन लाइक वी आर स्टिल इन द आर्मी.
सो कूल, सो कूल, सो कूल यार. इंटरेस्टिंग है. मतलब अगर इतने रूटीन्स चेक्स हो रहे हैं, सो आई एम एक्चुअली शॉक्ड. मतलब बट ठीक है. This is one question. If you feel like answering, else we can skip it. How costly is it? Is it very costly?
No. It is not very costly. What we have done is that because, okay, let me give you some context on the pricing.
Okay.
If you look at the brain drain that happened, I spoke about the segment we are going after. वो brain drain कौन से segment में हुआ है? These were the educated people who were service class, who laid a lot of emphasis on educating their children. उनको उन्होंने डॉक्टर बनाया, इंजीनियर बनाया, लॉयर बनाया. छोड़ के कौन गए? वो गए. So the people that have stayed back and the people on our platform are typically those what we call as the upper middle class.
Elites.
हाँ, नहीं elite नहीं. Rich and wealthy are fine.
Okay.
Because they already have a lot of support system in place. They're very well connected. So
plus their kids are also doing well for themselves.
और जो wealthy हैं, हो सकता है वो businessmen थे तो उनके बच्चे अभी next generation business में आ गए, वो उनके साथ ही रहते हैं.
Okay.
जो बाहर गए, जो पढ़ के बाहर गए, मेरे जैसे, मैं भी 15 साल बाहर रहा. They are the people who came from those middle class or upper middle class families, and now they are the ones. So I have to think about their affordability. Now what happens is, typically the child pays, and the child is earning money in dollars or pounds or whatever. उनको कुछ नहीं लगता है. But in some cases the parents say, हमको हमारे बेटे से कुछ नहीं लेना है, हमको ही पैसा भरना है. I have to be very mindful of how much money they have to spend. So this our fees are actually very low. It's less than 10,000 rupees a month at this point in time.
Okay.
Less than 10,000 rupees a month.
And you get all the services included in that?
All the services included in that.
Okay.
All the
so,
services.
okay, I thought like my prejudice was you charge per service.
No.
Okay.
No, we don't charge per service. It's a subscription fee. Now, in the subscription, there are many inclusions. Okay. For example, if you're on my plan, 12 डॉक्टर टेलीकंसल्टेशंस आपके प्लान में हैं, 6 फिजियोथेरेपी सेशंस आपके प्लान में, तो ऐसे इंक्लूजन्स होते हैं. उनके लिए वो पैसा नहीं देते. बट इफ दे से दैट नो वी वांट समथिंग एल्स, आप मुझे शिरडी ले जाइए साईं बाबा के दर्शन के लिए, अब वो ऊबर का कॉस्ट विल गेट चार्ज टू देम. द यू नो अगर वहाँ रहेंगे तो वो होटल का कॉस्ट गेट चार्ज. सो दोज थिंग्स आर चार्ज्ड बैक टू देम, बट नॉट फॉर द टाइम. And even for time, many of these visits, we call them visits, they are built into the plan. So when you're on a plan, for example, you get 56 hours of service as part of the plan.
Okay.
So you can use those. आपको डॉक्टर के पास जाना है and you don't want to go alone, you want somebody else to go with you, we will accompany you to the doctor. Then a visit gets deducted. But you've got 28 of these 2-hour visits built into the plan. So a lot of these things are built in. So we are trying to minimize some of these expenses by giving them a lot more than they can consume. Most customers don't consume all the things that we have included. Annual fitness plan included होता है उसमें.
अच्छा.
Everything is included.
Okay. क्या plan है next? क्या innovate होने वाला है?
तो next क्या हुआ है? I mean, so this is how I started. This is called Yodda Care. This what we have talked about so far is Yodda Care. What we did after that is we realized कि India तो बहुत बड़ी country है और अभी हमारे 3 cities में operations हैं. बट बुजुर्ग सारे 3 सिटीज में थोड़ी रहते
होंगे.
वो तो सातारा, सांगली, आगरा, जबलपुर, दे कैन बी ऑल ओवर. हाउ कैन आई रीच ऑल दीज सिटीज? कितना टाइम लगेगा मुझे? सो वी क्रिएटेड अ डिफरेंट प्रोडक्ट कॉल्ड योडा एनेबल. योडा एनेबल इज अ डिफरेंट, इट डज द सेम थिंग. आप बटन दबाओगे सर्विस, लंबा 3 सेकंड प्रेस किया तो इमरजेंसी. उसका ऑपरेटिंग मॉडल अलग है. इंस्टेड ऑफ आर्मी गाइज, व्हाट वी डू इज वी एनेबल दैट एल्डर्स, फैमिली एंड फ्रेंड्स टू act in the emergency. मतलब if you are an elder, आपका neighbor, आपका niece, आपका nephew, आपका भाई, आपके बहन, they will help in that emergency. Now Two things I take care of. One, these are trusted elements. The reason I hired army guys here is for trust. उसमें कोई issue नहीं है. They are not unknown volunteers.
Agreed.
They are your loved ones. Number two, they have an incentive to help you because they love you and they care for you. They want to help you. तो दो issues तो मैंने उसमें sort कर दिए क्योंकि आपके network के लोग हैं. तीसरा प्रॉब्लम ये है कि उनको पता नहीं करना क्या है. जब इमरजेंसी होती है तो मुझे क्या करना है. टुडे इफ आई डिडंट हैव माय सिस्टम यू वुड कॉल 5 पीपल. हो सकता है 5 में से 3 ने फ़ोन उठाया नहीं, वो मीटिंग में है. लाइक नाउ वी आर इन दिस सेशन. अगर आपको फ़ोन आता है आपके नेबर से, आप शायद नहीं उठाओगे. तो ऐसा उन्होंने 5 फ़ोन किए, 2 लोगों ने उठा लिया. अभी वो 2 लोग जो उठाए उनको ये नहीं समझ रहा है उनको करना क्या है. तो बाय डिफॉल्ट दे डू व्हाट आई डिड विद माय डैड. वो बोलते हैं हम आपके घर आ रहे हैं. वो दोनों आपके घर आएंगे, उसमें 20 मिनट 25 मिनट निकल गए. और अगर नोएडा और गुड़गांव के बीच में है तो 2 घंटे निकल गए. तब तक नथिंग हैज स्टार्टेड. देन दे गेट देयर, देन दे फिगर आउट व्हाट इज द सिचुएशन. डॉक्टर से बात करो, इससे बात करो, एंड देन इसे अभी हॉस्पिटल लेके जाना है, अभी एम्बुलेंस को बुलाओ. बहुत टाइम निकल जाता है. माई सोल्यूशन वर्क्स डिफरेंटली. एज सुन एज दैट इमरजेंसी इज रेस्ड, आपके नेटवर्क में आपने जितने लोगों को सेट किया है सबको 3 तरीके से नोटिफिकेशन जाता है. एक कॉल जाता है उनको सबको इंस्टेंट, एक SMS जाता है उनको, और उनके ऐप में उनका एक ऐप होता है इट्स कॉल्ड योडा एंजल. उसमें अलार्म बजता है एंड देन दे जॉइन अ जूम कॉल. मैं उनको एक जूम लिंक देता हूँ. वो जूम कॉल पे मेरा मॉडरेटर, सो आई हैव अ इमरजेंसी ट्रेन मॉडरेटर. ही अंडरस्टैंड्स द सिचुएशन कि क्या इमरजेंसी है, कौन सा प्रोटोकॉल पिक करना है, एंड ही स्टार्ट्स डेलीगेटिंग जॉब्स.
But if somebody is not able to open the door, if there is that kind of an emergency,
if somebody is not able to open the door, then there is nothing. Then we can, what we do in care is that we have a protocol of how to enter.
So what? हाँ, मतलब इसमें नहीं हो सकता.
इसमें नहीं हो सकता. But the thing is, the neighbor is also typically part of that network.
Okay.
And so when we onboard them, we typically say कि आपके neighbor, if you trust your neighbor enough, because anyway you're adding him, एक चाबी उनके पास होनी चाहिए to enter. So we delegate the task to them. So then what happens is कि हमारे सिस्टम में अलग अलग रोल्स होते हैं. फैमिली, लोकल गार्डियन, इमरजेंसी रिस्पॉन्डर्स, प्राइमरी सर्विस प्रोवाइडर्स, एंड देन द योडा मॉडरेटर हिमसेल्फ. फैमिली हैज ऑल परमिशंस. मतलब फैमिली आपका मेडिकल रिकॉर्ड एडिट भी कर सकता है, देख भी सकता है, आपका इंश्योरेंस, आपका KYC, आधार कार्ड, पैन कार्ड. जो लोकल गार्डियन होता है, लोकल गार्डियन इज अ एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली और लॉन्ग टर्म फ्रेंड हु यू ट्रस्ट.
अच्छा, ओके.
That person gets access to this data only during an active emergency. So by default they don't see it. Okay. But जब active emergency होती है तब उसको दिखता है. Because if let's say you live in, you're working in Delhi, your parents are in Jabalpur, or I'm sorry, I know your parents have passed away. But if your parents were lived in Jabalpur, you can't go from here to Jabalpur to handle that emergency. At that point there is going to be maybe a cousin of yours your parents are close to, maybe a long-term friend. But that person is now expected to go to the hospital with your parents. और हॉस्पिटल में उसको ये इन्फॉर्मेशन लगेगी, मेडिकल प्रोफाइल, मतलब एलर्जीज क्या है, दवाइयाँ कौन सी है,
सब कुछ लगेगा.
वो इन्फॉर्मेशन उनको हमारे ऐप में मिलता है. एंड द थर्ड थिंग इज द इमरजेंसी रिस्पॉन्डर. लेट्स से इज अ नेबर. सो वी टेल द नेबर आप उनके घर जाइए, देखिए क्या हो रहा है, और अगर डॉक्टर की ज़रूरत है तो वो इन्फॉर्मेशन भी हमारे ऐप में होता है. सो वी टेल उनके डॉक्टर को फ़ोन करिए, जूम लिंक भेजिए, देखिए डॉक्टर फ़ोन पे आ सकता है या जूम पे आ सकता है. अगर वो डॉक्टर आ सकता है, वी पुट द कैमरा ऑन, टॉक टू द पेरेंट, अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इज द सिचुएशन, एंड देन इमीडिएटली एक्ट. मतलब it's the structuring of
this may not be a utopic solution, but then too it's a better solution than
the default. Default situation is panic and chaos.
True. उससे तो अच्छा है. I'm not saying ये as good as elder जो आपका main model
care है, वो तो hands on the ground. But this model also works extremely well because, and then you were talking about pricing. We are pricing enable at 500 rupees a month. 500 रुपये महीने में अगर आपको पीस ऑफ माइंड मिल सकता है तो मुझे लगता है सबको ले लेना चाहिए.
Agreed. And especially if you have ailing parents, if you have elderly parents, everybody
worried about it, you should do it.
Agreed. Makes sense. Last सवाल, कहाँ पहुँची है अभी? Is it a bootstrapped venture? Is it a funded venture?
We have some funding from some angels. So we have not gone the institutional round yet.
Okay.
We're going to build the business a little bit more before we go down the institutional route.
Okay.
I suspect that in about 2 years time we will get to institutional funding.
अच्छा.
तो 2 साल और इसको हम bootstrap करेंगे.
जैसा जो भी आप बोल रहे हैं, angel round करेंगे.
हाँ, we will grow this a little bit more. Customers are coming, so we are in a revenue generating state.
Okay.
We've got some this enable जो product की बात करी है मैंने. This we are selling through enterprises. तो उसको retail नहीं कर रहे हम. So we go to a company, for that matter, our biggest customer is right here, Noida mein, or Global Logic is one of our customers.
Okay.
And what they have done is they have given enable to all their employees.
And they can get
All
it to
their employees.
parents.
Huh. And so we are seeing a big uptick in enterprises for this as an employee benefit.
That makes sense.
As
that
an
makes
employee
sense.
benefit.
So much sense.
Yeah.
Because you cater to all set of customers under one roof. उसको आपको 10 जगह मतलब रिटेल भी आएंगे होगा नहीं रिटेल है
नहीं मतलब people download.
Okay.
People download. But we are not pushing it. मतलब हमारे marketing efforts उसमें नहीं है. हाँ जो download कर लेते हैं they can do it. But we are primarily pushing it into societies.
Okay.
And we are primarily pushing it through enterprises.
Makes sense.
Now, I don't want to make a pre-announcement, but our next version of that is even more interesting.
Okay.
Because emergency response is not only for elders, even women need it. So we have now extended a platform for women's safety also. And so that is where it becomes even more interesting for enterprises, because a lot of these companies, their diversity ratios are anywhere between 35% to 41%. So if you have such a large volume of women working for you, that sometimes companies stress about, because they are also very young workforce. India is a very young country.
Agreed.
तो अगर आपकी कोई 25-year-old woman is working और रात को वो 8 बजे घर जा रही है, she might feel unsafe.
True.
So at that point in time, there is this app that can be downloaded on
It's
that.
an SOS app.
It's an SOS app, and not more than an SOS app. It's a moderated app. मतलब if they are in trouble, the Yoddha moderator still kicks in. If they have the women safety pack, the moderator still kicks in. Lots of amazing features for women's safety in this app. We're going to launch it soon, so maybe I'll come back and discuss that separately.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, but we are expanding into a lot of these different areas, which is primarily about care, safety, security, and peace of mind. Starts with elders, but we think women are also equally relevant in these kinds of places.
So cool. On that note, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. It
Thank
was
you, Aabir.
great having this conversation with you. एक ऐसा मतलब इसको problem solving तो नहीं बोलना चाहिए, but that's a reality of life which nobody wants around them. And if you're solving that, तो मतलब it's a very noble cause, I feel.
Thank you.
And may God bless you. I feel that जो भी आप करना चाह रहे हैं उसमें आप बहुत सक्सेसफुल हो, एंड बहुत सारे जो एल्डरलीज हैं, क्यूट एल्डरलीज हैं, उनकी आप हेल्प करते रहे.
Aabir, I'm very thankful to you, because through you we are able to get to your audience, and the biggest challenge a startup has is getting its message out, and hopefully what we just talked about is resonating with your audiences, and please join us in taking care of your parents.
Thank you very much.
Aabir.
That was Tarun Sharma from Yoddha on Cracking Conversation.